They called me a disgrace. They cut me out of their lives like I was nothing, stripped me of a family name I had carried since birth, and left me to rot in silence. For years, I lived in exile, no phone calls, no visits, no acknowledgement that I even existed. And I survived. I built a life from scratch, brick by brick, fueled by the bitter certainty that I'd never be enough for them. But the moment my career began to flourish, when I finally had money in my account and stability they could see from a distance, everything changed. The same voices that spat on me as worthless suddenly returned. Not with apologies. Not with love. Not with reconciliation. They came with open palms and sharp tongues, demanding my paycheck as if they were entitled to it by blood alone. The injustice wasn't just in their greed, it was in their arrogance, their belief that I'd fold under guilt. They thought I was still the outcast boy they'd abandoned. They were wrong. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 34 years old, male, and I work as a financial analyst for a mid-tier investment firm in Boston. If you've never met a financial analyst, the simplest way to explain it is this: I live inside numbers. Balance sheets, quarterly forecasts, risk models, those are my tools. They don't lie. They don't judge. They simply tell you where you stand. I wish I could say the same about family. The night I was disowned, I was 22. It was late October, the kind of night where the air tastes sharp and every breath feels colder than the one before. I had just finished telling my father that I wasn't going to take over Hale and Sons Construction, the family business he had built with his bare hands and his bloodied knuckles. For him, the company wasn't just a business, it was a legacy. To me, it was a cage. I'm not cut out for construction, I told him, my voice shaking despite my resolve. I want to go into finance. Numbers make sense to me. His face went red, the way it always did when anger boiled beneath his skin. Numbers? Sitting in some office shuffling paper? That's not real work. You're a Hale. And a Hale builds. That's what we do. Behind him, my mother stood silent, her arms folded tightly as if to hold herself back from speaking. My younger brother, David, leaned in the doorway with a smirk. He was already apprenticing under Dad, already the golden child. I'm not David, I said, more firmly this time. I'm not you. I don't want that life. The silence that followed was short but heavy, like the air before a storm breaks. My father's next words cut deeper than any blow. You're a disgrace, Marcus. If you walk away from this, you walk away from us. Don't come back. I remember standing there with a duffel bag in my hand, the zipper half broken, stuffed with clothes I'd grabbed in a rush. My father's cigarette smoke clung to the air as he opened the door and pointed me out. My mother wouldn't even look at me. David's smirk widened. That was it. No dramatic chase down the driveway. No last-minute wait, let's talk. Just the door slamming shut, the porch light going dark, and the sound of autumn leaves crunching under my boots as I walked away. For weeks afterward, I kept thinking it was temporary. That maybe Dad would cool off, that Mom would call, that David would realize blood was thicker than pride. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing came. No calls. No letters. No invitations to Thanksgiving or Christmas. When David got married, I wasn't told. I found out months later through a tagged photo online, his smile wide as Dad clapped him on the back. When my sister, Rachel, had her first baby, I didn't hear from her. A mutual friend mentioned it in passing, like a minor detail I should have known. I wasn't family anymore. Not in their eyes. At first, I broke under the weight of it. I'd sit in my apartment, a dingy one-bedroom with water stains on the ceiling, staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Birthdays hurt the most. Each year I'd blow out a candle alone, whispering a wish I knew wouldn't come true. But grief has a way of hardening into something else. Over time, the silence stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like fuel. I told myself I'd never need them again. If they thought I was a disgrace, I'd prove them wrong, not with words, but with success. So I buried myself in work. I took on extra shifts, studied for certifications until my eyes blurred, and clawed my way up the financial ladder. Each exam I passed, each promotion I earned, was another brick in the wall between me and the people who had cast me out. By my late 20s, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I had a steady career, a growing savings account, and a life I had built with my own hands, no family name attached. And I thought that was the end of it. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Because the moment I finally stood tall, stable, and successful, the moment I no longer needed them, was the moment they decided they needed me. Exile doesn't arrive with trumpets or fanfare. It seeps in quietly, measured out in the absences that pile up until you finally recognize them for what they are. At first, it was silence. No calls. No texts. No emails. Then came the absences I didn't expect. No invitation to Thanksgiving, no mention of birthdays, no family group photos with me included. Eventually, it became clear, I hadn't just walked away from Hale & Sons construction. I'd been erased from Hale family history. The first year was brutal. I rented a dingy basement apartment in Alston, where the pipes rattled every time someone upstairs flushed a toilet and the walls carried the constant thrum of bass from late-night parties. I lived on ramen, peanut butter, and the occasional splurge of takeout when I pulled a double at the firm's entry-level analyst desk. I told myself I was fine, that independence was worth the cost, but most nights I lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling paint, replaying my father's words, "You're a disgrace." I carried that phrase like a scar. Every time I failed, it throbbed. When I struggled with rent, when I bombed my first attempt at the Series 7 exam, when I showed up at work with wrinkled shirts because my laundry machine had died mid-cycle. You're a disgrace. But slowly, survival turned into routine. Routine into progress. Progress into momentum. I woke up at 5:30 every morning and ran 3 miles along the Charles River, no matter how cold, no matter if the air stung my lungs. At 6:40 sharp, I boarded the Red Line into the city with a backpack full of finance textbooks and flashcards. By 8 a.m., I was at my desk, staring down spreadsheets and balance sheets that felt as steady as anchors in a chaotic world. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't disown you. They didn't call you a disgrace. Evenings were for studying. CFA prep manuals piled high on my desk, pages filled with scribbled notes and sticky flags. My apartment smelled constantly of highlighters and instant coffee. On weekends, when other 20-somethings went per hopping, I camped in the public library, memorizing formulas under flickering fluorescent lights. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fun. But it was forward motion. By 26, I passed the CFA level 2. By 28, I'd clawed my way from junior analyst to associate. My paychecks grew. I upgraded from the basement apartment to a modest 1-bedroom in Cambridge, sunlight pouring through clean windows instead of leaking through water-stained ceilings. I even bought a used BMW, old but polished, something my father had once called a yuppie car when sneering about city types. I drove it with quiet satisfaction. But for all the progress, the ache of absence never fully disappeared. On holidays, I'd pass families carrying grocery bags, laughter spilling onto sidewalks, and wonder if mine even said my name anymore. On birthdays, I'd light a single candle on a cupcake, blow it out, and whisper the same wish year after year, that they'd see me, just once, without contempt. That wish never came. What did come, however, was a shift. Independence hardened into resolve. The longer I went without them, the less I cared about their approval. Success became its own proof, and I measured it meticulously. My brokerage account balance. My steadily rising credit score. My first 5-figure bonus. Each milestone was a brick in the wall I was building between me and their rejection. And yet, ironically, that wall, built from independence, discipline, and success, was exactly what brought them back into my life. It started small. A LinkedIn connection request from my cousin, Sarah, someone who hadn't spoken to me in years. Then a Facebook friend request from my sister, Rachel, the same sister who hadn't even told me she'd had a baby. Their messages were vague, fishing lines cast into the water. "Hey stranger, how have you been?" At first, I ignored them. I thought maybe it was guilt. Maybe they realized how long it had been. But within months, the tone shifted. Messages turned from soft nostalgia to pointed questions. "I heard you're doing well for yourself. Must be nice, working in finance." Then the first request came. Small. Rachel asked if I could help out a little with her son's school supplies. Just $50. I wired it without thinking, more out of shock than generosity. A week later, David called me for the first time in 12 years. His voice was warm, falsely so. After 5 minutes of shallow catch-up, he admitted the real reason for his call: their father's truck had broken down. Repairs weren't cheap. Could I help out? That's when it hit me. I hadn't been forgiven. I hadn't been welcomed back. I'd been noticed. Not for who I was, but for what I had. Not as a son. Not as a brother. As a paycheck. The promotion email landed at 7:12 a.m. on a Thursday, subject line, offer, senior analyst, equity research. I was in the office early, as usual, the floor still half dark, the only sounds the HVAC and the distant rattle of a cart from building maintenance. I read it twice, then a third time, scanning the numbers like they might change if I blinked wrong. Base salary, $128,000. Target bonus, 20 to 30%. Equity participation on select mandates. Health, 401k match bumped to 6%. It wasn't Wall Street lore, no champagne pyramids, no confetti, just clean lines in a sans serif font confirming that the years I had spent waking before dawn had calcified into something measurable. I signed within the hour. HR sent back the formal packet, PDFs named with tidy underscores, hail underscore Marcus underscore comp underscore summary underscore 2024.pdf, non-compete underscore agreement. PDF, equity plan underscore overview. PDF. I archived them in a folder tree that mirrored my brain, career/comp/2024 underscore promotion. That night I celebrated the way I always did, quietly. A ribeye, medium rare, from a place on Mass Avenue that sears it hot enough to fog the window for a heartbeat, and a single glass of rye. I took the long way home, the BMW's engine a steady hum under my palm, the Cambridge lights smeared like watercolor in the drizzle. Success didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like numbers aligning. My account balances ticked upward in tidy increments, checking, savings, brokerage. A line chart in my budgeting app climbed at a slope I could compute in my head. I automated transfers like clockwork, $2,500 on the 1st to Vanguard, $600 on the 15th to the HSA, $300 weekly to a boring high-yield account I labeled, simply, Runway. I kept a spreadsheet named Pillars. XLSX, 5 tabs, housing, liquidity, retirement, insurance, discretionary. No magic. Just discipline. 2 weeks later, the first quarterly report I let hit the client portal at 8:03, Q2 Small Cap Industrials Outlook. I had scrubbed every figure twice, printed the draft to mark up with a Pilot G2, and backed into every conclusion with an audit trail, source link, timestamp, method. The piece wasn't flashy, but it was clean, defensible. The partner CC'd me on a client note. Marcus's deck is the only one this quarter where the footnotes didn't make me nervous. I kept that email. I keep everything. Paycheck pride is a quiet thing. It's not the car or the watch, mine's a scratched Seiko with a loom that refuses to die. It's the steadiness. The knowledge that your rent is paid on the 1st, your card is paid in full on the 14th, and your future self has money on the way like trains on a timetable. For the first time since I'd stood on that porch with a duffel bag, I felt not safe, exactly, but structurally sound. That's when the messages multiplied. Rachel's text shifted from polite to pointed. Evan's school is doing a laptop program, $450. He needs it to keep up. She attached a link and a deadline. David called with the faux warmth he deploys when he wants something. Proud of you, little brother. Dad's F-150 needs a new transmission. It's a family truck, you know? Sentimental. Shop quoted $3,900. We're all pitching in. All? I asked. Who's we? A pause. Well. You, mostly. I didn't answer right away. I did what I always do, I opened a new note, requests_log. MD and wrote it down with date, amount, claimed purpose, channel, call, text, and any attached proof. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being empirical. I had learned the hard way that memories distort under pressure. Logs don't. The requests kept coming. A Venmo ping from my mother, no message, just a $sign and $120 arrived on a Sunday at 9:18 a.m. The note field read, groceries. The first contact from her in 12 years was a silent invoice. 2 days later, a Facebook message from my father, of all people, short and misspelled, heard you doing well. Family stands together. Need a hand with the shop payroll till a project clears. You'll get it back. No numbers. No details. Just entitlement wearing Sunday best. I sat at my kitchen island with the laptop open, the requests log on the left and my budget on the right. The numbers said I could give. The numbers also said something else, I didn't know. I considered sending small, bounded help, $200 for the laptop, a grocery card for mom. But I remembered the quiet year one nights in Alston, the rumble of someone else's toilet through my ceiling, the feeling of being unwanted unless I bent into their shape. Boundaries are easier to draw in theory. In practice, they're a conversation with your nervous system. Mine didn't like conflict. So I wrote a template, because templates make hard things bearable. From Marcus Hale. Subject, help. I'm glad to hear from you. I'm willing to consider specific, documented needs related to health, education, or immediate essentials. For any request, please send 1. A current invoice or statement, 2. Amount and due date, 3. How much you've already contributed. I won't fund luxuries, business shortfalls, or open-ended asks. I won't be able to respond without documentation. I sent versions of it to each of them. It wasn't charity, it was policy. A line drawn with a ruler, not a crayon. The reactions were swift. Rachel replied with a screenshot of a school portal page, the balance circled, a deadline in red. I paid the vendor directly, not her, and noted it in the log. David called me a corporate robot and said family shouldn't need receipts. My father ignored the policy altogether and left a voicemail at 6:02 a.m. the next day. You think you're better than us now? You owe this family. I fed you. I raised you. Wiring info to follow. He texted routing and account numbers like he was sending me a sandwich order. At work, I was building models of cash flows and cost of capital. At home, I was building a different kind of model: who asks for what, how, and why. Patterns emerge the way they always do when you log enough lines. Rachel asked for child-linked items with proof. David asked for big round numbers with none. My mother asked small and wordless. My father didn't ask. He demanded. The quarter closed. My first senior level bonus hit on a Friday at 12:01 a.m., a neat $21,600 after taxes. I moved the money in 3 transactions: $10,000 to Vanguard, $8,000 to an I-bond ladder, $3,600 to Runway. I thought about buying something loud. Instead, I updated Pillars, XLSX and brewed coffee. By then, the messages weren't requests. They were obligations written in someone else's handwriting. Family group chat screenshots trickled in from Sarah: a leak at the shop roof, a contractor who would give us a break if we pay cash, a photo of my dad standing under a stained ceiling tile like a martyr. The implication was unmissable. I closed my laptop and stared at my hands. They didn't shake. I wasn't 22 on a porch anymore. I was a man who had built a life on ledger lines and rules strong enough to stand on. Pride, I realized, isn't the number in your account. It's the shape of your no. When the next ask came, $5,000 short-term to cover payroll, I didn't send my template. I sent a sentence: no. Please don't ask again without documentation. The reply wasn't a message. It was a knock. Saturday, 7:41 p.m. A familiar truck idling at the curb, headlights washing my building in a harsh white. The doorbell rang twice. Then a third time. The ghosts hadn't just returned. They had found my address. The first time I saw my father's truck outside my apartment, I felt it before I heard it. The window panes trembled faintly, the deep idle of the engine a bass note that resonated in my chest. I hadn't heard that sound in over a decade, yet it landed like a reflex. The same old Ford F-150, navy blue, the exhaust pipe patched with welded steel I remembered holding for him when I was 17. He was still driving it. Still smoking it into the ground. The headlights washed over my building, then cut. Silence. A knock followed, sharp and deliberate, rattling my apartment door. I didn't move. Not at first. My breath was loud in my own ears, the kind of shallow breathing you hear in a waiting room before bad news. I checked the peephole. There he was. Older, yes, but not diminished. His frame still thick from years of construction work, his hair now more salt than pepper, his jaw set in that way I knew too well. He didn't look ashamed. He didn't even look nervous. He looked like he was there on business. Marcus, he said, voice muffled through the door. Open up. We need to talk. We? Not I. Not your mother wants to see you. We? I cracked the door but left the chain on. What do you want? He glanced at the chain and smirked faintly. Still paranoid, huh? Not a good look for a man in finance. He shifted his weight, leaning closer. Your mother and I, we hit a rough patch at the shop. Payroll's tight. We need a bridge. Thought you'd step up. There it was. No greeting. No apology. No acknowledgement of the 12 years of silence. Straight to the ask. I kept my tone flat. The answer's no. His eyes narrowed. Don't be like that. You're doing well. I've seen it. The car. The apartment. The job. You've got it good. Family sticks together. I laughed once, humorless. Family sticks together? You told me I wasn't family. You made that clear. For the first time, he shifted. Just a flicker, his jaw tightening. That was a long time ago. We were angry. Doesn't matter now. What matters is your blood. You owe us. That word, oh, hit harder than I expected. I unlatched the chain and stepped into the doorway fully, squaring my shoulders. I don't owe you a thing. Not for the roof over my head when I was a kid. Not for the meals. That was your job as parents. You don't get to send me a bill for raising me. His smirk hardened. You think you're above us now. You think that paycheck makes you better. No, I said. It just makes me free. And I closed the door. The knock didn't come again. The engine roared back to life, the headlights flared, and the truck pulled away. But that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Within days, Rachel messaged me again. This time not soft, not asking. Demanding. Screenshots of overdue notices, utility bills in red. If you cared about family, you'd help. David followed, his text dripping with sarcasm. All those numbers you shuffle and you can't spare a few? Must be nice. Even my mother broke her silence, an email with the subject line groceries and nothing in the body except a scanned receipt. It wasn't guilt they were trying anymore. It was pressure. Coordinated, almost. I updated requests_log. MD, each entry more aggressive than the last. Patterns emerging, demands escalating. And as I scrolled, I realized something chilling. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. They believed my success was theirs by default. That my labor, my discipline, my sacrifices were just a long-term investment they were now ready to collect on. That night, I sat at my desk long after midnight, the city lights bleeding through the blinds, and made a decision. If they wanted to test me, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd document everything. I'd build a trail so undeniable that when the time came, no one, family or not, could twist the narrative. Because they hadn't come back for me. They'd come back for my paycheck. And they were about to learn just how expensive underestimating me would be. The next week unfolded like a controlled burn that no one bothered to control. It didn't start with shouting. It started with invoices. Monday, 7:14 a.m., a text from Rachel with a PDF attachment named Evan_tech fee_statement. PDF. The balance due was $452.79, due in 9 days. He'll fall behind without it, she wrote. You can help. I paid the school directly again and logged it, paid vendor, not family. Tuesday, 9:03 p.m., David called while I was meal prepping chicken and broccoli for the week. Shop roofs leaking over the front office. We got a guy who'll patch it for $2,500 if we pay cash before Friday. He spoke fast, salesman smooth, like he could slide past my policy with momentum. Send it tonight and I'll drive over with a receipt. Send the written quote, I said, killing the burner. Company name, license number, scope of work, terms. I'll pay the contractor directly. Silence stretched. You don't trust your family? I trust invoices. He hung up without replying. I entered it into requests_log. MD and tagged it no documentation. Wednesday brought a new tactic. My mother emailed from an account she'd never used with me, Lynn Hale 1971 ad. Subject line, groceries. The body was a photo of a supermarket receipt for $117.34, the image slanted like it had been shot across a kitchen table. No greeting. No signature. No words at all. I sat staring at it longer than I care to admit, counting the items: bread, eggs, apples, a family pack of pork chops, a $24 bottle of Pinot Grigio. I sent a digital grocery card to the store directly and wrote, card sent, $150, vendor locked. I thought that might quiet things. It didn't. It converted ask into expect. Thursday, 6:22 a.m., a voicemail from my father, the background noise of the truck's cabin unmistakable. Marcus, payroll's due tomorrow. I'm not calling to debate. Wire $5,000 today by 3 p.m. Family stands together. You owe your own blood. He read routing and account numbers slowly, as if dictating an order to a clerk. I transcribed it word for word into the log and saved the recording to a folder called audio/family_contacts, then BCC'd the file to a backup email I keep for exactly one reason: to ensure nothing can go missing later. At work, the pressure began to leak through the perimeter I kept so carefully. Around noon my desk phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. This is Marcus, I said, already bracing. A woman's voice, bright and performative. Hi. This is Tasha from Hale & Sons. I'm calling to confirm Marcus is still employed at, what was it? Harborfield Capital? We're just updating records for family business support. Could you transfer me to HR? My stomach iced over. You've reached Marcus. A beat. Then the smile vanished from her voice. David said you'd be difficult. She hung up. I sat there, hand still on the receiver, pulse beating in my throat. Then I did what I do. I documented. 12:07 p.m., external call impersonating vendor/family rep, Attempted employer verification. I let HR know an unsolicited caller might fish for employment details and placed a flag on my file: no information releases without written consent. By Friday, the tone was no longer pleading. It was punitive. Cousin Sarah posted a long status on Facebook, public, tagging me and half the family tree. Wild how some folks forget where they came from. Some of us are drowning and Mr. Big City can't even spot his own mother for groceries. Comments bloomed underneath: thumbs up from relatives I hadn't seen since high school, a prayer hands emoji from an aunt who once pressed cash into my palm after dad berated me for getting a B+. Someone wrote, "Money changes people." I took screenshots with timestamps and URLs and filed them away. That evening Rachel called, crying. I don't mean tears, I mean snot-clogged sobs that squeeze your chest by reflex. Mom's blood pressure is up, she said. The stress is killing her. If something happens, that's on you. Guilt is a blunt instrument, it hurts even when you see it coming. I swallowed and went back to the only boundary that works, the repeatable one. I'll cover a verified medical expense if it's billed by the provider. Send the invoice. You're a monster, she whispered, and hung up. 10 minutes later she texted a cropped photo of a pharmacy bag with a label I couldn't read. I replied, provider invoice only. Covered directly. The typing indicator blinked and vanished. Saturday, the knock returned. This time David. Hoodie, ball cap, mirrored shades, like a discount debt collector. He shifted his weight from heel to heel at my door and held up a folded paper. Loan agreement, he said. Simple. $5,000, 30 days, 0 interest. You can do that for family. I took the paper. It was a single page, typed in a font he must have thought looked official, Bradley Hand, of all things, with a blank where my signature should go and his routing number typed twice. No company letterhead, no terms, no collateral. I could smell the cologne he always bathed in before nights out, synthetic citrus and vanity. I'll pay a roofer directly, I said, handing it back. Send me a legitimate quote. He leaned closer. Dad's telling folks why you won't help. It's not a good look, Marcus. Word gets around. There it was. The first open threat. Not fists. Reputation. I felt something in me cool. Not break, cool. Like water turned to glass. I unlocked the deadbolt, stepped into the hall, and closed the door behind me so we were eye to eye with no barrier to blame. Here's how this will go, I said softly. I will support verified essentials, health, education, food, paid to the provider. I will not fund business expenses, cash fixes, or anything without documentation. If you or anyone else harasses me at home or work, I'll file reports. If you defame me publicly, I will respond publicly, with receipts. He laughed without humor. Receipts? Screenshots, I said. Voicemails. Posts. The loan agreement in Bradley Hand. He snatched the paper back, face tightening. You always were a clerk playing cop. He turned and walked toward the elevator without a goodbye, shoulders tight, hands in fists. I went inside, locked the door, and opened a new file, chronology. MD. Timeline on the left, evidence on the right. I added links to every artifact, audio, screenshots, PDFs, and a column titled Claimed Purpose versus Actual Document. I scheduled a calendar block for Monday, 1 hour with an attorney a colleague had recommended months ago for a different matter, a woman known for her precise letters that made bullies evaporate. I booked a session with a therapist, too, not because I was falling apart, but because I knew what was coming would try to make me doubt my own reality, and I wanted a witness in the room who didn't share my blood. On Sunday night, at 11:53 p.m., my father sent one more message. No greeting. A photo of a handwritten ledger ripped from a yellow pad, columns labeled food, rent, utilities, clothing, numbers from my childhood years scrawled in his thick block letters, a total circled at the bottom, $86,400. His caption, itemized. You can start by paying back your share. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I saved the image, named it claim_parental_debt_86400.jpg, and slid it into the folder with everything else. The asks had become invoices. The invoices were becoming threats. The threats were shading into smear. Good. Pressure reveals shape. I finally knew exactly what I was dealing with. And I was done dealing on their terms. The ledger photo, my father's crude attempt to invoice me for childhood, didn't leave my mind. I printed it on the office copier the next morning, slipped it into a manila folder, and stared at it during lunch while my colleagues joked about fantasy football. My father had reduced 22 years of parenting into a line item, $86,400. Food, rent, utilities, clothing. As if love could be tallied like receipts. As if a parent's duty was a loan, accruing interest, waiting to be collected when the child succeeded. That week, the pressure sharpened. It wasn't just requests anymore, it was a campaign. Rachel doubled down, her texts relentless. Evan's field trip is $75. His sneakers are too small, $89 at Foot Locker. He'll be humiliated if he can't go like the other kids. Each message dripped with urgency, guilt dressed as practicality. I paid once, directly to the school, but refused the shoes. Her reply was swift, "You don't know what it's like to see your son cry because of you." Because of me. David's angle was different. His messages came late, past midnight, often after I assumed he'd been drinking. "You walk around like you're some big deal," one read. "But remember who taught you to ride a bike? Who covered for you when you crashed Dad's truck at 16? We had your back. Where's yours now?" Another, "You can't erase blood, Marcus. You think colleagues will stand by you when the bottom falls out? They won't. Only family does. And you're failing." My mother's emails stayed short, but their brevity cut. One arrived with a scanned medical bill, $243 for hypertension management. The note below, "This is real. If something happens, it's on you." No greeting. No signature. Just a weaponized invoice. I paid that one. Directly to the provider, of course. But the guilt dug in. Every click of submit payment felt like a tacit admission that they were right, that I owed them. And then there were the calls. My father left 3 voicemails in 1 week, each angrier than the last. "You think this is optional? You think you can ignore your own blood?" In one, he shouted so loud the speaker distorted. "I kept a roof over your head. You owe me for every nail I hammered, every hour I broke my back while you were off playing with calculators." The old shame returned like a reflex. My chest tightened. My hands shook. For days, I carried that sick weight into the office, running numbers on spreadsheets while fighting the echo of his voice in my head. "You're a disgrace. You owe us." The smear campaign escalated too. Cousin Sarah tagged me in another Facebook post. "Some people would rather fund their own fancy cars than help their family eat. Guess money really does change people." Underneath, relatives piled on. "Selfish. Cold-hearted. Ungrateful brat." They didn't know the details. They didn't want to. The story was simpler if I was the villain. It would have been easy to give in, to start wiring small sums just to stop the noise. That's what they wanted, compliance by exhaustion. But I'd learned something in finance: when pressure builds, you don't collapse, you structure it. So I structured. I formalized my evidence folder. Every voicemail converted to MP3, labeled with date and time. Every text screenshot saved as PNG, with metadata intact. Every demand logged in requests_log. MD, now over 30 entries long. I even printed them on archival paper and locked them in a fireproof safe, just in case. I hired the attorney I'd bookmarked months ago, a woman named Celeste Granger. Her office was minimalist, steel gray desk, no family photos, a single bonsai tree under perfect light. She listened quietly as I laid out the binder, texts, screenshots, invoices, ledger photo. Her only interruption was to ask, "Do you want to cut them off, or do you want to protect yourself while you say no?" "Both," I said. She nodded once. "Then you'll need boundaries that are enforceable. Documented refusals. Paper trails so clean no one can twist them." She drafted a cease and desist for harassment but advised I hold it as leverage for now. "Sometimes the threat of sunlight is enough," she said. Meanwhile, I booked weekly sessions with Dr. Larson, a therapist recommended by a colleague. I told him straight, "I'm not here to fix guilt. I'm here to stop it from being a lever they can pull." He nodded, jotting notes. "Guilt," he said, "is their currency. You can't stop them from printing it, but you can refuse to spend it." By the end of the month, I felt steadier. Not invulnerable, never that, but steadier. Each new demand arrived like an expected entry in a balance sheet. Predictable. Classifiable. Trackable. Then, late one Friday night, David sent a message that changed everything. "If you don't step up, Dad says he'll take this public. He kept records. He can show everyone how much raising you cost. You'll look like a fraud when he proves you never paid him back." Attached was the photo of that yellow pad ledger. The same one I'd already archived. I stared at the message, then at the folder on my screen, packed with receipts, threats, and contradictions. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. If they wanted a war of records, they'd picked the wrong opponent. If guilt was their weapon, paper was mine. I'd lived my entire career inside documentation, spreadsheets, audit trails, time-stamped entries that either reconciled or revealed fraud. And now, staring at a family that believed they could rewrite history with yellow pad scrawls and Facebook posts, I decided to treat them the same way I would treat a hostile audit client: every claim verified, every inconsistency cataloged, every lie pinned to the page like an insect in a glass case. I started with the basics. The requests_log. MD file that had once been a running note became a structured database. Columns: date, sender, medium, claimed need, amount requested, documentation provided, actual purpose. I color-coded it: green for essential/verified, red for unverifiable or manipulative, yellow for pending. Within 2 weeks, the table had grown to 48 entries. Only 5 were green. The more I tracked, the clearer the patterns became. Rachel always attached documents, school portals, PDF invoices, but they were cropped, incomplete, designed to obscure more than reveal. When I insisted on full statements, she grew defensive. David never sent proof at all, just numbers pulled from thin air: $3,900 for a transmission, $2,500 for a roof repair, $5,000 for short-term payroll. His figures always ended in double zeros, always cash, always urgent. My mother's receipts were genuine enough but always mixed: groceries paired with bottles of wine, toiletries next to scratch-off lottery tickets. And my father? He sent nothing but that ledger, as if a handwritten bill for parenting was equivalent to a legal contract. Next, I built a chronology. MD timeline, every interaction logged by date and time, cross-referenced with the evidence. I added screenshots of posts, audio files of voicemails, scans of mailed envelopes. Each entry had a link to supporting proof. If I were hit by a bus tomorrow, anyone could open the file and see the story unfold without me saying a word. But I didn't stop there. I filed FOIA requests with the city clerk for building permits tied to Hale & Sons construction. Curious about the leaky roof story David kept pushing. Within 2 weeks, I had the permits. The shop roof had been replaced in full 3 years ago with a 15-year warranty. No leak was possible unless they'd faked the paperwork. I also pulled credit reports on myself and checked for linked accounts. It wasn't paranoia, it was procedure. And sure enough, I found 2 soft inquiries tied to banks I hadn't applied to. One of them was in my father's town, flagged as consumer credit inquiry. Someone had tried to run my name. I called the fraud hotline and placed a lock on all new accounts. Another entry for the log: every artifact I collected went into a folder system on my encrypted drive: family claims/requests, family claims/proof, family claims/contradictions. Inside, each subfolder was dated, backed up to cloud storage under a pseudonym, and copied onto a physical drive stored in my office safe. Overkill? Maybe. But I knew the kind of story they were trying to spin: prodigal son makes it big, abandons suffering family, refuses to help. In the court of public opinion, narrative beats truth, unless you can pin truth down in black and white. By late spring, the family's messages were arriving almost daily. Demands wrapped in insults. Rachel, you sit there with spreadsheets while your nephew goes without. David, you'll regret this when dad drags your name through town. My father's favorite refrain: you owe us. I itemized it. Pay up. And yet, the more they pressed, the calmer I became. Not because the pressure had eased, it hadn't. But because I had turned their campaign into evidence. Each new demand was another entry in the ledger I was building against them. The turning point came one evening in May. I received an email, supposedly from Rachel, but when I checked the header metadata, it had been sent from David's IP address. The attachment was a photoshopped hospital invoice, blurry, misaligned fonts, and the kicker: the template still bore the sample watermark in faint gray. I compared it against a real invoice from the same hospital and highlighted every discrepancy: wrong tax ID, mismatched formatting, missing barcode. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was fraud. I printed the forged invoice, annotated it line by line, and slipped it into my binder. Then I added a sticky note with one word: leverage. Because I realized something then. This wasn't just about surviving their demands. It was about preparing the one move they would never see coming. The day would come when they pushed too far, when they tried to drag me into the light as a disgrace. And when that day arrived, I'd be ready. Not with shouting, not with guilt, not with apologies. With paper. Cold, time-stamped, undeniable paper. I chose the location like I choose investments: low risk, high visibility, and a paper trail. Not the family house, not my apartment, not a bar where tempers drink themselves into absolutes. I picked Hastings Community Center, a municipal building with glass walls, cameras over the doors, and a front desk that timestamps visitor badges. Neutral ground. I booked room B for financial literacy night. True enough, I intended to teach a lesson, and paid the $45 fee with my card so the receipt would memorialize the meeting. Thursday, 6 p.m. I sent a group text to my father, Rachel, and David. Meet me, Hastings Community Center, room B, 6 p.m. Thursday. Bring documentation for any requests. No documentation, no discussion. At 5:30 I arrived with a banker's messenger bag and a calm I didn't entirely feel. The room smelled of linoleum and lemon cleaner. I set the table like an exam, 3 printed copies of a single-page assistance policy I'd drafted with Celeste, date, header, my signature, a small voice recorder, not hidden, on purpose, and a legal pad. I propped my phone against a water bottle, camera facing the room. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, so before anything began, I planned to get consent on record. The overhead clock ticked with metronomic certainty. At 5:57, Rachel slipped in first, clutching a tote bag fat with papers and indignation. David followed, hands in pockets, chin high, sunglasses on despite the fluorescent lights. My father arrived last, shoulders squared under his work jacket, hat in hand, gaze sweeping the room like he owned even this public square. I watched him notice the recorder, the phone, the neatly arranged papers. He smirked. Paranoid as ever, he said. Transparent as ever, I replied, and pressed record. For the record, this meeting is being recorded by audio and video. Do you consent? Rachel's eyes flicked to the devices. Do we have to? Yes, I said. Or we can reschedule in front of a mediator. Your call. David shrugged. Fine. I consent. Rachel nodded. My father's jaw worked, a small clench. I consent, he said finally, as if giving me permission. I slid a copy of the assistance policy to each of them. 1 page. Plain language. Essentials only, health, food, education. Vendor payments only. Documentation required, invoice, account, due date. No cash. No business expenses. No harassment. Any defamation will be answered with documentation. Violations and support. My signature sat at the bottom, dated, with Celeste's office listed under prepared in consultation with. Not bluff. Context. Rachel started first, papers spilling from her tote like a magician's endless scarf. Evan's laptop, the field trip, camp deposit. I held up a hand. 1 request at a time. Full invoice, vendor, due date. She pushed forward a real invoice from the school portal. Clean. Verified. Due next week. I circled the amount. Approved. I'll pay the school directly. Her face eased, almost shocked. She hadn't expected yes to come with rules. David leaned back, scoffing. This is ridiculous. We're not your clients. You're petitioners, I said evenly. Petitioners bring proof. He slid a single typed sheet across the table. Roof repair, $2,500, cash discount. No company name. No license number. No scope. I tapped the paper with my pen. Not documentation. It's from the contractor, he snapped. What contractor? He hesitated. The tell. You don't know him. I opened my bag, pulled out a manila folder labeled Hale & Sons, permit/warranty, and set a copy of the city permit down beside his paper. The roof was replaced 3 years ago. 15-year warranty. I have the permit and the contractor's warranty on file. There's no leak. His mouth opened, then shut. Color climbed his neck. Maybe it's the office ceiling. Then bring the invoice for the interior repair, I said. Vendor. License. Scope. Rachel shifted in her chair. My father watched me with a new appraisal, something wary threading through the dismissive stare. I turned to him. You sent me a ledger for $86,400, an itemized bill for raising me. I placed a crisp printout of the photo beside his elbow. Explain that. His fingers curled around the hat on the table. I kept a roof over your head. I fed you. That's real money, not your spreadsheet fairy dust. Every parent knows what it costs. You think you get to walk away and then watch us starve? I leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice level. What you describe is called parenting. Under the law, it's not a debt a child owes, in Massachusetts or anywhere else. You can't retroactively invoice a child for childhood. I slid a second document across, Celeste's short memo with citations to state statutes. I brought you the law since the ledger didn't come with any. He didn't read it. He stared at me, nostrils flaring slightly, like I was a stubborn nail refusing to seat. You always had an answer. No, I said quietly. I have evidence. I turned to the voice recorder. For the record, I will support verified essentials for Rachel's child, paid directly, with documentation. I will not fund Hale and Sons' business expenses. I will not wire cash to any family member. Continued public defamation will be answered with documentation. Harassment at my home or workplace will be referred to counsel. Do you all understand? Don't talk to us like we're your interns, David said, leaning in, breath hot with mint and impatience. You wouldn't have that job if Dad hadn't worked himself to the bone. You owe him. Oh me, my father echoed, a chorus, a creed. I kept my eyes on David. You said Dad taught me to ride a bike and covered for me when I crashed the truck. Those are memories. Not liens. I slid another page forward, the photoshopped hospital invoice he'd emailed from his IP. I'd highlighted the watermark, the wrong tax ID, the missing barcode. Explain this. His face stilled. For a second the room held the exact quiet of a courtroom right before a gavel falls. Rachel's eyes widened. My father looked at the paper, then at David. What's that? Nothing, David said too quickly. It's a draft. It's a forgery, I said. And a crime. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. If you send me another fake, this leaves my binder and goes to the police. Today, it stays here. I tapped the folder. Leverage, not revenge. The clock on the wall clicked to 6:41. I felt the room tip, the way an elevator settles that last inch to level with the floor. My father shifted his hat, considering the new physics. So you'll pay for the boys' school, he said at last, reluctant. But nothing for the business. Correct. And groceries? Rachel asked, small for the first time. Vendor cards only. No cash. And me? David said, mouth twisting. Documentation, I said. Or nothing. He laughed, bitter. You think a stack of papers makes you strong. No, I said. It makes me clear. I gathered the documents, slid them back into the bag, and clicked the recorder off. This is the last time we meet like this. Future requests by email with attachments. If you show up at my apartment again, I file a report. If you call my office, I escalate to legal. If you post about me, I respond with receipts. My father stood, pushing the chair back so hard it squealed. He put on his hat like armor. You're not a son, he said, voice gravel. You're a ledger. I learned from the best, I answered, and watched the words land. Rachel gathered her tote. David clenched his single useless sheet of roof repair. They left in a staggered line, my father last, pausing at the door to look back like a man measuring a house he once built and now intends to tear down. He didn't. The door side shut. At the front desk, I asked the attendant to print visitor logs showing their check-in times. She stamped them, Hastings Community Center, 05:23 to 5:58 p.m., 6:01 p.m., 6:03 p.m. I slid the logs into the binder with the receipt for room B. On the sidewalk, dusk had gone soft. The glass walls reflected 3 fading silhouettes walking away and 1 standing still. When I got home, I wrote the entry in chronology. MD. 05:23 to 1800 hours to 1845, in-person meeting at Hastings CC, room B. Audio/video recorded with consent. Presented assistance policy. Rachel provided genuine invoice, approved, vendor paid. David presented non-doc roof repair, rejected. Presented proof of forged invoice, warning issued. Father reiterated debt for childhood claim, provided legal memo refuting. All parties acknowledged boundaries moving forward. Then I added a new line at the bottom of the file, a header I hadn't used before, Phase 2, exposure contingency. Beneath it, 1 sentence. If they go public, we go documented. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and listened to the quiet. Not triumph. Not peace. Structure. The kind you can stand on. The Hastings meeting had shifted the ground. For the first time, I'd forced them to confront proof instead of riding on guilt. Rachel backed off slightly, sending smaller, verifiable requests. My mother stuck to grocery receipts, quiet and transactional. But David and my father, those two doubled down. When manipulation fails, bullies escalate. A week after the meeting, David blasted me in a group chat with cousins, accusing me of lawyering up against family. He wrote, Marcus thinks he's some kind of cop with his receipts. He'd rather bury us in paperwork than lend a hand. Some brother. Screenshots flooded my inbox, relatives forwarding the smear to me, some with sympathy, most with side-eyed curiosity. I didn't reply. Not in the chat, not privately. Instead, I filed it under defamation/2024_06_02_ group chat. PNG. Then I drafted a quiet response for when I'd need it. Meanwhile, my father wasn't content with texts and voicemails. He visited my office. Security called me at 9:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Mr. Hale, there's a man here asking for you, claims he's your father. Says it's urgent." I went downstairs, binder in hand, recorder in pocket. There he was, standing in the marble lobby like he belonged, jaw set, boots leaving grit on polished stone. "Marcus," he said loudly, drawing stairs. "Why are you hiding from your own family?" I guided him outside, away from reception. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket, a photocopy of the ledger again, this time with interest 5% per annum scribbled at the bottom. 86,400, plus interest. "You've had 12 years to pay. Time's up." I stared at him. "You forged an invoice. Now you've inflated it with compound interest." "It's not forged," he said, voice rising. "It's what you owe. Everyone knows parents don't get a free ride. You think you made yourself? I made you." People on the sidewalk slowed, curious. Phones angled our way. That was his real goal, public shame. He wanted me cornered in the court of reputation, with bystanders as his jury. So I flipped the script. I pulled the memo from Celeste, the legal citation refuting parental debt, and held it up. "This is the law," I said clearly, loud enough for the phones. "You cannot retroactively bill a child for childhood. This ledger is a fraud. Any further harassment will be met with legal action." A few bystanders nodded, murmuring. My father's face darkened, but he shoved the paper back in his jacket and stormed off. The phones followed him. I logged it that afternoon: public confrontation, attempted debt collection, refuted with legal memo, witnesses present. That was the moment I realized, his arrogance wasn't just a weakness, it was a tool. The more he tried to shame me, the more he gave me evidence. All I had to do was let him talk, let him bluster, and capture every contradiction. So I set traps, subtle ones. When David texted about the roof again, I asked innocently, "Which contractor? The one who did the replacement 3 years ago?" His reply, "Different guy, you don't know him," contradicted the warranty I already held. Log entry, contradiction 2024_06_05_roof_warranty. PNG. When Rachel tried guilt again, "Evan cries because you won't help," I replied, "School portal shows his balance is zero after my payment. Can you explain why he told you otherwise?" No reply came. Another entry. Each interaction gave me more ammunition. By mid-June, my binder had doubled in size: emails, texts, posts, invoices, contradictions, forgeries, public confrontations. It wasn't just a log anymore. It was a case file. And then came the break I hadn't expected. Sarah, the cousin who'd smeared me online, sent a message late one night: "Look, I don't agree with what they're doing, but Dad says your father's planning to go to the local paper with his story. He thinks he can shame you into paying if it's public." Perfect. If my father wanted to drag me into the light, then I'd let him walk straight into the sun, with every falsehood documented, time-stamped, and ready for exposure. The trap was set. Not for me. For him. All I had to do now was wait. It happened exactly the way Sarah warned me it would. On a Tuesday morning in late June, the Elmwood Gazette published a front-page feature: "Local businessman says estranged son abandons family, refuses to help in time of need." My father's face stared from the banner photo, arms folded, jaw tight, the ledger clutched like scripture. The article quoted him liberally: "I gave that boy everything. Food, clothes, a roof over his head. Now he's got a big city job and a fancy car, but he won't give a dime to his own blood. Families don't quit on each other. He owes us." They printed the ledger, too, a blurry scan with the $86,400 circled in red ink. Beneath it, the reporter's line: "Mr. Hale says this represents the cost of raising his son, which he believes should be repaid." The smear landed hard. Within hours, my inbox filled with subject lines like "Shame on you, an ungrateful brat." Anonymous numbers left voicemails spitting venom. On social media, relatives shared the article with captions like, "See? We tried to warn you." For the casual reader, the narrative was clean: father sacrifices, son prospers, son refuses to help. But I'd been preparing for this moment since the first demand hit my phone. And I didn't intend to play defense. At 3 p.m., I sent Julia Rains at the Sentinel, a watchdog blog I trusted, my entire case file. Not summaries. Not paraphrases. The full binder, logs, invoices, forged documents, voicemails, screenshots, city permits, visitor logs, receipts from Hastings Community Center. I highlighted contradictions, annotated metadata, cross-referenced every claim. Run it clean, I told her. No embellishment. Just the record. Julia worked fast. By Thursday morning, her piece went live. Disowned son targeted in family money scheme. Receipts tell a different story. Where the Gazette had run with narrative, the Sentinel laid out evidence like a courtroom exhibit. Side-by-side screenshots showed the forged hospital invoice next to a genuine one, the watermark circled in red. The city permit for the roof appeared next to David's quote, annotated, roof replaced 2019, under warranty until 2034. My father's ledger photo sat beside Celeste's legal memo, citing statutes that made parental debt claims unenforceable. They even embedded audio clips, my father shouting, "You owe us," I itemized it. Followed by my calm reply, "Parenting is not a debt." The conclusion was damning. Far from neglecting his family, Marcus Hale has consistently offered to pay verified essentials directly to vendors, while refusing unverifiable cash demands. The evidence suggests not abandonment, but exploitation. The article spread like wildfire. Comment sections flipped overnight. Where I'd once been the selfish son, I was now the scapegoat who had documented every step. Strangers praised the forensic level receipts. Some even memed the yellow pad ledger, calling it the invoice for love. At work, colleagues who'd whispered behind my back now stopped by my desk with claps on the shoulder. "Hell of a job standing up to that," one said. Even my boss pulled me aside. "Not everyone could keep records that clean under pressure. Remind me never to cross you in an audit." But the real impact was at home. Rachel went silent, her requests evaporating. My mother sent a single terse email, "You didn't have to humiliate us." David raged online for a day, calling me a liar, until readers started posting the forged invoice with his metadata attached. His account went private within 24 hours. And my father? He vanished. The man who had marched into the Gazette with his ledger refused to answer calls once reporters began hounding him about forged documents and harassment. His empire of shame collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. That Thursday night, I sat at my kitchen island with the laptop open to the Sentinel article, scrolling through the evidence I already knew by heart. For the first time in months, the tightness in my chest eased. Not because I'd won, victory wasn't the point. Because the truth was out, fixed, undeniable. They had dragged me into the public square, ledger in hand. And I'd answered with the one thing stronger than narrative: proof. Vindication doesn't roar. It lands in silence, like a courtroom when the jury files back in, or an email notification that flips your whole world with one line. For me, it began with the Gazette itself. On the Monday after the Sentinel piece, the paper ran a small, sheepish correction on page 4. "We regret that certain claims in our June 18 feature could not be independently verified. Mr. Hale provided documentation refuting his father's statements. We apologize for any misunderstanding." The same paper that had plastered my face across their front page buried the correction like a classified ad. But it didn't matter. The damage had already shifted, back onto the people who created it. By Wednesday, Hale and Sons was floundering. Clients began pulling projects, citing concerns about professionalism. The forged invoice Julia had exposed found its way onto contractor forums, where industry peers tore into it. If they're willing to fake medical bills, what else are they willing to fake? One comment read. Credibility bled out of the business faster than money ever had. David tried to fight. He posted a 10-minute Facebook Live rant, calling me a soulless calculator and insisting the roof really was leaking. Viewers flooded the comments with screenshots of the warranty permit. Mid-rant, someone typed, "Show the invoice then." He ended the stream 2 minutes later, face red, jaw tight. Rachel withdrew into silence. When she finally texted, it wasn't another request. It was a single line, "I didn't know they'd go that far." I didn't reply. My mother clung to denial. She emailed me late at night, "This is tearing us apart. Family matters more than receipts. You could have handled this privately." I read it twice, then filed it in family claims/deflections. Because here's the truth, I had tried to handle it privately. They were the ones who dragged me into the light. But the sharpest reversal came from my father. Reporters tracked him down outside the shop, cameras rolling. They asked about the forged invoice, about the $86,400 ledger, about my documented offers to pay essentials. His answers stumbled. "I just wanted fairness," he said, eyes darting. "Raising a child isn't free. When pressed on the fake hospital bill, he muttered, "I can't speak to that," and walked away. The clip aired on local news, his silence louder than any shout. For me, life steadied. At Harborfield Capital, HR sent a formal apology for not shielding me sooner when family inquiries had come through. My boss gave me a week's leave, saying, "You've earned breathing room." Even neighbors who'd crossed the street months earlier now stopped me with awkward smiles. Saw that article. Tough stuff, glad you cleared your name. I nodded politely. I didn't need their contrition. What struck me most was how quickly the current shifted. For months, I had been the villain, ungrateful son, selfish paycheck, cold ledger. And now? I was the man who kept receipts, the one who turned manipulation into evidence, who outmaneuvered his own family at their own game. But I didn't gloat. That was their style, not mine. The truth is, the reversal wasn't about winning. It was about balance. For the first time since I was 22, standing on a porch with a duffel bag, I felt the scales tip back to level. No more begging for approval. No more guilt leveraged as debt. Just the clean weight of documentation and boundaries that no one, not even blood, could twist. The Hale family had called me a disgrace. They'd tried to turn my success into their entitlement, my silence into their leverage. And now, they were the ones on trial, not in court, but in the court of public record, exposed by the very arrogance they thought would bury me. That was the reversal, not me proving myself to them, but them proving themselves to everyone else. The storm didn't end with a bang. It tapered, like a fire smoldering into ash. By August, the calls stopped. The text slowed to silence. The Facebook smears vanished into deleted posts, accounts locked behind privacy settings. Hale and Sons shuttered 2 of its offices, and a notice appeared in the paper: business restructuring due to unforeseen financial strain. Everyone in town knew the truth, even if they didn't say it out loud. The family that had once prided itself on grit and legacy had collapsed under its own entitlement. I didn't feel triumph. I felt distance. At Harborfield, I threw myself into the next earnings cycle, days measured in models and late-night edits. The routine felt cleaner now, numbers were just numbers, no one shouting over them, no one trying to twist them into guilt. At home, my apartment was quiet, steady. My fridge was stocked, bills paid on auto draft, calendar marked with nothing but deadlines and the occasional therapy session. Rachel sent one last message in September: "I don't know if we'll ever fix this, but I hope someday Evan understands why you didn't cave." I archived it. My mother stopped writing altogether. David's number came up once, late at night, but I let it ring out. I didn't need to hear his voice. And my father? The last I saw of him was a grainy clip online, him in a diner booth, hat pulled low, pushing eggs around a plate while a reporter's mic hovered unanswered. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not because time had withered him, but because arrogance without power shrinks a man down to size. One Saturday, I drove past the old shop. The Hale and Sons sign was still bolted to the roof, paint peeling, letters faded. A for lease banner hung beneath it, flapping in the wind. I parked across the street, sat in the BMW I'd bought with my own money, and stared at the building that had once been the altar of my supposed disgrace. No gloating. No satisfaction. Just clarity. They had disowned me when I was young, when I was nothing. Then they demanded my paycheck when I became something. They thought they could invoice me for love, weaponize guilt, and shame me into obedience. But in the end, all they taught me was the value of proof. I started the car, signal clicking steady, and merged back into traffic. The shop disappeared in the mirror, small and shrinking. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back.